Here we go. Hi there, I'm the Utopian Trainer. Welcome to this video. So what we're having now, we're having the second interview in the series of asking people about their utopia. So welcome to this. I'm very glad that we can have Davy with us. How are you doing, Davy?
I'm doing great, thanks, Jan. I'm super happy to be here.
Great. Where are you at the moment?
I'm in Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yes, Nørrebro, which is in the north of the capital.
Okay. And how's life there?
It's great. It's great. I think we're talking about it a bit, but like the thoughtfulness of, I think, dance, and especially like the city of Copenhagen is amazing, and I really enjoy it. Just even having a walk around, it's really, really nice.
It does look like a nice place. Yeah. Now, I met you as well as some of your colleagues, something like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that, like in a musical capacity. And since then, you've been like really pushing on with your music. What I'll do is, before I talk to you about that, I think what we'll do is I'll play a video for our viewers. You can see what I'm on about. Just please share. Here we go.
I want to tell my siblings in chains that all the pain, it wasn't in vain. That the blood that runs in our veins, it's still the same. They switched on us like Cain on Abel, divided us like we were unequal. Freedom was and remains the plan. Rest assured we will see the change.
Did you notice things fall apart? Especially when your skin too dark. Do your wrist still carry marks? Or is it only your heart? Do you feel like you're insane? Ridden with guilt and ashamed, marching to the beat of the lust, swimming where the sea is dangerous. When they tie you down, shackled legs, shackled hands. When they think you've drowned, turn the tide to see the change. Forced you to carry the cross, telling you they'll pray for your loss. On your wounds they added a sword, and to injury added a sword. Police brutality, keeping you on your knees, but guilty when kneeling down, standing for unity. Handcuffed behind your back, bargain until you bleed. Hold on tight and free at last you will be. When they tie you down, shackled legs, shackled hands. When they think you've drowned, turn the tide to see the change. When you hit the ground, don't stay still, break those chains. Hey, hey. Won't you get them all? Get them all. Chains upon your skin, heavy like a sea. Won't you get them all? Get them all. Gaps upon your dreams, burning from within. Won't you get them all? Get them all. Get them all. Get them all. For freedom, freedom, for freedom, for freedom, freedom.
So
Thanks.
thanks for that, David.
Wow. Thanks. It's wow. It's good to see. It takes so long to put some work, especially during COVID, where I had to literally learn how to produce. At the time we met, I was a guitarist, and this time I really took the keys, and I'm not a keyboardist or pianist, and I had to figure out how do you produce, and it's the blessing of this. It's like not only I think the message I was able to really put what was on my heart, especially last year, with a lot of social unrest going around, and but also learning. And I think it's one of the projects, one of the songs I'm the most proud of. For real, it's yeah, it's I discovered through it that I really love producing, and hopefully I'll be able to get better and better at it.
It's quite like a powerful song, powerful message there.
Thanks. I mean, this message in particular, like the whole EP that's called Distant Dream EP is all about a bit what you're about actually with your, with the platform you're creating, which is, as some people say, there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs, but you want to see what are the more inspiring trade-offs to get actually to something where we all can, live and fulfill potential. And so for me, this song in particular, Shackles, is all about using what's negative to turn into a tool for freedom, turn the tide, to see the change, right? And it's about like, how do you turn a narrative, in this case, the Black people narrative of being in shackles, whether it's in the past as slaves or in, with the 13th Amendment in the US or in the UK with police brutality, into something that's empowering you for freedom, which ultimately is a state of mind. Freedom is there. It's not something that you have to materially discover. It's something that's inside. And so that's kind of the journey I wanted with the song. It starts with, from your broken heart and the oppression to actually freedom. This is the end, and the rest is a mean to an end. The suffering is a mean to an end. Just, healing and freedom.
I think it was Primo Levi who said that he was considering what freedom is. And Primo Levi was someone who was in Auschwitz, who survived there. And he said, freedom is the place, the state in which one freely decides how one reacts to outer events. That's kind of paraphrasing like what he said. So it kind of fits in. The one thing was said in the lyrics was like chains upon your skin. Could you go more into that? What you meant by that?
Yeah, it's the imagery of, I think, shackles are, both, physically and symbolically something that's on, on your body. But in this specific case, it's about, I think if I remember, won't you cut them off, chains upon your skin, binding from within, I think. And it's kind of that feeling of, you don't really have chains upon your skin, but it's something that symbolically binds you when you're from a different color, like, than the majority of the country in which you are. And I felt like, cut them off, like, if you feel like your skin has chains attached to it, it binds you from within more than externally. So why don't you cut these off? And so it's kind of like keeping kind of the theme of the freedom is in your mind.
So cutting yourself off from like an internalization about what is people being happening, being saying about you or doing to you over the centuries.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, it's exactly that. It's it's kind of always a very tricky debate, right? Where people are like, we hear sometimes in the US reparations for this and that, and ultimately, I believe that, again, physically, symbolically, everything as a consequence into who you are today. but there's no more that you can do than to free yourself of that, of these empowering narratives, independently of everything else. That's the denominator for all of us across any colors, any genders. It's like, what is in my hand and in my control, the control of my mind, that I can change more for the best. So for me, it's really about taking responsibility, and freeing yourself of, and there's also another dimension. When I go into the end, it's, you might know the Prophet, the book from Khalil Gibran.
Oh yeah.
But in it, there's this famous quote where he says, pain is the breaking of the shell of understanding. Basically paraphrasing, it's the medicine that you give to yourself, right, to be able to actually, understand and free yourself. And so, and understand yourself. And that's the quote: "Freedom is a state, is a state of mind, unconfined. The breaking of the shell," refers to this Khalil Gibran. And I felt like, again, it's about that. Like, how do you use that pain, right? And as a tool of understanding, so that you can be free. And I think it's really about that. No matter who you are, there's life is hard, and you get all of these difficulties that bruise you, right? And at the end of the day, it's using these as a tool of understanding, so that you can heal and you can improve yourself. So that's kind of the song that I try to put in an aesthetic that's dynamic and changing, but great learning lesson for me to just do that. I think it's what I want to get to, more songs and getting better at nailing these kind of feelings through music. I'm very wordy because I'm not a native English speaker. I'm just I still have to explain a bit my thoughts into my songs, and I want to get to the point where I just say 3 words and you know what it is, and it's like, whoa, okay, that's powerful.
Sometimes the music can say more than even though the lyrics, I'm not saying about the lyrics, but sometimes the music conveys something in addition to the lyrics.
Yeah, and I still remember, actually, you were my first singing teacher ever. That's pretty cool. I remember it started, it gave me, I was just exploring at the time. So everything had a very, almost disproportionate impact into how passionate I became afterwards, even if I was like 26 or whatever it is. But it was super cool. I owe you a pint.
Yeah. Yeah, if ever you're in Wrocław again, definitely. Or if ever I'm in Copenhagen, yeah. Sure. But I mean, really, this is you, I mean, I saw you had talent then. I saw you had singing abilities and songwriting abilities. It was very clear. This was from you what this was coming. Now, I mean, I've seen a few videos. You've been doing a few gigs before COVID, yeah?
Yeah. Yes. I did, and actually, I was releasing my first EP last year. It's called Living, and I released it March 18th, which is probably one of the worst times of history to release them. And I had many gigs lined up with So Far Sounds, for instance, or different gigs in London, and they ended up being all cancelled. So I couldn't really promote anything live, and it's really where I felt this is my strength. Like, I really feel still my songs are better live with drum and bass and so on. And it was like a slap, punch in the face, right? It's like, spend years building that stuff up, and then I can't defend it live. But then it sent me to that journey of doing the CP, which is overcome and just learn more and just keep producing music faster from your room, like from your flat. Yeah. And I'm happy about that lesson, because I would have never had the courage to go and say, here's the 80 tracks or whatever that you need for a song, and you're going to make them all happen. The harmonies, the da-da-da. And I would have never had the courage to do it myself if I didn't have that slap in terms of, you can't play live anymore. What do you do? So it was That year, I think, actually, I wonder for you, but that year for me has been profoundly impacting into what, into the changes I made, including Copenhagen
Yeah,
in music. I don't know
yeah,
about you if you had that kind of, I also reinvent myself in this
yeah. It
dot.
contributed to it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like what your reaction to the pandemic and the restrictions upon you is like you're really making the freedom that you sing about real, because it's like, again, you're in a certain like restrictive scenario, but you've used this to develop your abilities and also get music out. I'm just going to put just a share in the screen, just to show that you have your own YouTube channel, Davy Denke, I should say, with all these kind of songs which are there, including with the EP.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like it's easy.
Yeah. So yeah, so all my viewers, give this a subscribe,
Thanks.
because I used to see you like singing live, and I associated you with your guitar playing because remember you played me Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix, and I've tried to learn this, and this is so difficult.
Jimmy's crazy, and I still
Yeah.
can't play it like the way, but yeah, Hendrix, such an inspiration because he had that freedom actually, he was never playing the same thing. It was like, it's
Yeah.
pointless. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go and play the exact same solo, the exact things every time. Is a creation. Every opportunity is a creation from where you stand. And for me, it was so inspiring that music is not about encapsulating
Mm-hmm.
something and then selling it. It's something that has to live in different forms.
Mm-hmm.
Like us, right? Like we evolve, we different from a day to another.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I'm sure we'll talk about that, but again, having the financial sustainability of career helped me not approach music as something where I need to bring financial sustainability early on. And definitely these kind of things resonated even more with me, like the Jimi Hendrix and the freedom of in playing, more than if I had to survive as a musician only.
Yeah.
Which now maybe I have to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's another.
It's like a spiritual thing, like with Jimmy, you just feel he's totally in accordance, in alignment, probably is the right word to say, with his music. It's like his guitar is playing on his left hand, of course. It's like such a wow. There's like, you can really feel the fire. You can feel all kinds of the emotion is like with that. And yeah, it's like a spiritual thing. Just like with your song is like, there's a spiritual thing which is going on there.
Thanks. The African American, music for me has been. It's all about that. Like if you can, actually like Bob Dylan, which is that's the songwriter and so on. Just say something that paraphrase, which is we already have too many songs, right? Like there's so many love songs. If you want a great love song, you can go to Aretha Franklin and that's it. And okay, you don't need a new, whatever song. But all you need is honest people with things to say. And for me, this was what I thought was really captivated me from a lot of the African American music, which is that soul that they put into the music. That's like you feel like they have something to say, and that justifies the reason why they create that love song, because no one needs it but them and the fact to express. That's why they bring it to existence. And for me, it's how I want to approach music. It's like, well, at the time I'm like, if the song doesn't feel like I want to say it, it's authentic, I just can it. Yeah. I just don't put it out. I record it, I'll play it, I'll write it, but I just don't put it out because at the 100th time when I play it live, I want to be able to feel. This is important. I have to tell you that. And so Jimmy, again, all that scene, from Jimmy to actually Jeff Buckley or all the people I really love, this kind of feeling that they have something to say. It's so emotional. That's why they put it out. And that's why I want to put ultimately.
It was last year during the lockdown when I was just going a bit mad with being inside all the time and not getting much time to myself. that I started looking into like the roots of metal and going beyond there. So rock and roll, blues, rhythm and blues, and then before that, the 19th century with the music that was being sung by the descendants of people born from West Africa, the call and response kind of music, or the kind of like even the Muslim prayer, what's it called, the Muzerim, the kind of the song which is sung, and this thing, this was then being brought over came into the US, and this just, oh, so much like creativity, and there's again, there's kind of the spirit, the message, the feeling, but also the togetherness, you know. And this is the like you, I was thinking of this because you were saying, I mean, I was attending the Kino Nova Horizonte last year, so you know it's the film festival that take place in Wrocław. But
Yes.
I was watching these films at home, and it was nowhere near the same thing as going to the cinema, being with loads of people, going to the local pub or whatever. You're with hundreds of people, but here I'm with my wife, and it's like a completely like different experience. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it's good then you've been, despite the like the restriction with music, you've still been able to have development in some way. But I just can't wait to go to gigs again, you know, having culture, because culture, you need people for that, really.
I mean, yeah, I'm 100% like with you on this. Like, so you know, my career working in technology and you know, as you know, a partner manager at YouTube for specifically artist development, and then being a musician, it's like not only my job but my passion are music, and a huge part of it, having been in London for what 7 years, is about that. It's about being, you know, on the weekend being at gigs, whether it's me, whether it's friends, or whether it's partners. And so, you know, as you said, there's almost this spiritual thing that happens when, you know, the lights dim and you know you're in a larger room with people right
Yeah.
around. It's like, and it's very hard to recreate in any other situation. Like, you know, in front of your computer, you can't have that kind of transcendental kind of experience, you know, collective experience that
Mm-hmm.
can only have, you know, in a collective way, I think, and where the venue is set up for it, right? Like, you know, not to be too spiritual, but it's almost like when you look at even, you know, the reason why we have all these tall buildings forever, right? The taller building representing the spiritual manifestation of a time, like church, you know, when you go to the era. It's like these big places with light coming out from above. You know, it's like fundamentally music is that, right? Like a concert is that. And, you know, and cinema for me is also, you know, there's a lot of debates about Netflix and, you know, HBO Max and releasing there versus in the theater. I do feel like the theater is an important place. I don't think you can, you know, I don't think you can replicate that, you know, home screen.
I would like to see like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul on the big screen, you know, because some of the cinematography there.
Yeah. It's just the economics. It's different. That what's great with Netflix and so on is the storytelling that you can afford to tell over a longer period of time. Where a movie, you have to usually fall into the same tropes and same scenarios because you have like an hour and a half to tell a story. Therefore, you're gonna get a beginning, a middle, and an end that look the same. But on TV, you can afford to expand on several seasons. You know, like one of my favorite shows, The Wire, is 5 seasons. And they go literally one season is an aspect of, you know, the city of Baltimore. The hero is Baltimore across the. You can't really kind of do that in another format. So everything has its use, narratively speaking, but I still feel, you know, we've all been to the cinema, like blown apart, and just it's like a quasi religious experience, you know, of whoa, wait, you know, losing yourself into that moment where you see on the big screen. Definitely.
Right, we've been talking about half an hour now. We should come to the theme of the interview.
You made it in post.
It's been really interesting so far. Now, utopia. So I asked you, what is your utopia? So what's your utopia?
So, you know, I've been thinking about this, and I think it's So I'll go from the premise that a utopia is technically very unlikely to be realized, but it's kind of the most powerful statement that I could make about what I wish for the future. And I think it's the realization, the fruitful realization of humans, right, across the world. A world in which we can all, fruitfully develop and contribute to what we call humanity. And it takes a shape of different things for different people. But it's also, I feel, a world where there's the golden rule or the silver rules that have been stated across different civilizations, from the Asian silver rule, going do to other people what you want them to do to you, and the silver rule being the negative of it. Don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. And I feel like it's statements that embody, fundamentally live better the people around you that they were before you met them. And I really feel like, for me, that's utopia. Us leaving each other more empowered than when we meet each other, by the exchange of ideas from different perspectives with care, love, respect, And it's about that. It does, my utopia doesn't have a shape or form like in the sense of technological advancement where we all live forever. It's more that, like the understanding that everyone has a different perspective, different challenges that ultimately bring to the diversity of humanity, and it makes it better for, so it's kind of my utopia, like a world where we all live up to a potential to bring value and empowerment to humanity.
So it sounds like, to kind of summarize, it's one where like diversity, I mean, you didn't say the word diversity, but it's kind of how I understand it, where the diversity is really being utilized, that people be able to share their things as they are able to, and people are able to learn from each other for their own like self-development. I mean, Maslow called it like self-actualization. Yeah,
exactly. Maslow is definitely one of the models. And I heard recently that there's authors, I don't remember the author, but it was like someone who's actually extrapolating the Maslow, pyramid, which was a simplification of the original idea of Maslow, but it's about that. Like, I think the book is called Transcend. I don't remember the author, but yeah, it's about that transcendence through self-actualization. And at the end of the day, like my favorite book, I think still is Mastery from Robert Greene. I'm a big fan of Robert Greene because he challenged me to look at life in a very pragmatic way. Power relationships. You like them, you hate politics. Well, it's still a fact. It still exists. And you either use them or you defend yourself from them, but you need to know them. And I really love that about 48 laws of power and then everything that he did afterwards. Mastery really has a great proposition, which is, every human is different, right? So, the way you see colors, the way you hear music, the reason why you like to do something or eat something, the way you like certain instruments or you're drawn to something or not something else, all of that is like a fingerprint, right? It's unique to you. And so the biggest contribution that you can do to humanity is to develop these inclinations to the point where they're useful to everyone else, right? And so for me, I thought like, so it's a living, breathing thing. Like it says, mastery is not, I wanted to be a fireman and now I'm a fireman. It's how can I train, how can I use my brain and my abilities so that I contribute to the broader society and to potentially history, like Darwin, like a lot of people. And I love that proposition that, the diversity of thought is the biggest contribution to who we are, as individuals, to the greater community, And so it's really how I want to live my life. Like the reason why I still do music and not just a corporate job or something like that is because I feel like there's synergies. And my brain likes certain things, and I'm just chasing them until they become something that becomes, empowering to people, right? And it can happen now, it can happen in 50 years, it can happen whatever. It's not the point. The point is, am I pursuing that path? And so, yeah, that's for me. That's really what I see as utopia. People living like that, Yeah, and maybe the last thing I'd say, because sometimes I feel like the debate about diversity are sometimes misunderstood, or at least I feel like what's coming out, modern world of sound bites and tweeters and stuff like that is usually diversity is great for the sake of it. And I don't think so. I think that the bottom line is that diversity is usually observably positive, because we're talking about when there's diversity of thought, not of color, not of gender, not of social status or economical status, just diversity of thought in all its manifestations usually produces, even in a capitalistic system, a better result, because you are able to understand or to input different things that ultimately benefit your customer, benefit the broader society. And so I feel like, when some people say, oh yeah, diversity, we need more Black people here, or we need more women there, or there's a reason why. And personal opinion, maybe, controversial or not, is, if it's not needed, it's not needed. But, the question is, as an organization today, do you have that diversity of thought? And it can be two white people, two white male, but is there that diversity, right? Are your recruits only from the same university with the same, backgrounds, with the same stuff, or are they rich and poor, or from different backgrounds, from different perspectives? And that's already diversity. There's just more chances that, as a Black person born in France who lived abroad half of his life, I have a different perspective than this, two, let's say, ethnically same people with the same gender from the same city, the same background. And that, for me, that's the beauty of diversity, and that's the promise of it. It's not just the sake for, let's just make sure we have, half of this and half of that. It's really like, how can you integrate that in an organization to make it better? And I think that's that's an important distinction, because sometimes it gets into almost tribalism instead of constructive diversity of thought. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Now, I'm gonna come back to like a diversity of utopia later. Just there's one thing you said, because to tell the truth, the thing that really interests me is economics. And it's not always like a very sexy theme for many people, but like economics and like equality and like social justice, however one wants to call it. And you were saying that people be able to contribute into society in the way that they're able to. And it just reminded me of what Karl Marx said about from each according to their ability. And I'm thinking, so in your utopia, what would the economy be like? Maybe it's like a bit of an abstract question, but it's something I'm interested in.
Tough question. Damn it. You know what? On this one, I'll have to I want to remain pragmatic for the sake of being useful and inspiring to what we have now. Because, I think Marxist ideas of, are quite beautiful. Are they pragmatic? I'm not sure. But are they inspiring? Yes. But now the reality is that, economically speaking, there's a fact that scarcity is a reality. It is a reality. And so economically speaking, like, scarcity means there's not enough things for everyone. The thing that is desirable is usually not available to everyone in the same rate. And so, I think it's not to say that my economy will be the one that is now, like where ultra billionaires like own like 50% of the world,
Mhm.
but it's more like we have to take into account the realities of, yeah, you're a group of people, there's going to be scarcity, but I think we can raise the bar of what people have.
Mhm.
And there's always going to be scarcity, but we have to make sure that this scarcity is something that's more valuable over time.
Mhm.
And so the economy would be pretty much a functioning capitalistic society. Because again, in its purest form, if capitalism works,
Mhm.
there's efficiency,
Mhm.
just like Marxism.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, I always think of the baseline being almost the human rights. And for
Mhm.
me, if I was to say in my utopian, uh, um, utopic world, it would be like, every year the world convenes and say, we have to review the human rights
Mhm.
across the board. And this year, a human right being added is access to information.
Mhm.
Society, go on and make sure that everyone in the world has a fair access to information, or to food, or to what, or to mental health, right? And just raising the bar little by little by really saying the economic output is not, it's almost like just an externality of what we're doing, not the main, not the end. But then say, every time we go into that pursuit, what we're really measuring is that level, or that lower, that common denominator as the human race. And I
Mhm.
think that's what we're missing now in the capitalistic system in which we are. We're not really saying, actually, economic output is just an indicator of something. The
Mhm.
real game is that less people suffer from hunger. Is that working or not?
Mhm. Mhm.
Across the world. And I just feel like it's that. Like, I think, competition, things like that, is a natural, they've existed since we were like primates trying to, get whatever we were trying to get. It's not going to change. We're not going to be in a world where everybody has everything. But if we can raise the, the lower denominator across the world and really commit to that, then I think we're in a beautiful world where as long as you feel like your kids and your grandkids will be better off than you, I think you feel at peace.
Mhm.
It's when you don't think that your kids will have a better life than you, that things become really, really difficult.
Mhm.
And I think we're in a society right now in certain, in Western capital, ultra liberalistic societies, liberal as in the US liberalism, that's not necessarily working. I mean, the US, if you were to compare on the baseline, how is the US doing? You'd say, do people have access to food, shelter, mental health, and all these basic things? And you actually probably end up with the US not being that great on these. You'd end up with Asian, countries faring much better at these things that they are in some proportion.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like my economic view is not a complete scratch, starting from scratch. Because as a Frenchman, you know, there's something that I think one of our presidents said to my former CEO, Eric Schmidt, and he said, I think it was Nicolas Sarkozy, but he said, we know well in France that for every revolution, there's a counter-revolution.
Mhm.
So be careful when you completely displace something,
Mhm.
something else comes, but it's not necessarily what you want. It's usually the contrary, like after the French Revolution. So I don't really believe in, decapitating the king to put a bourgeoisie that then does even worse. But I'm more for incremental evolutions of our system, fixing where it's not working.
Mhm. Maybe
And that's kind
call
of
it,
like,
sorry.
no,
Maybe
go ahead.
call it like that's like a pragmatic approach.
Yeah.
It makes me think about, because you've said the word like pragmaticism a few times, like makes me just think about the value of pragmatism as a utopian value or competence.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah. I think a good, not a good utopia, because utopia is technically, a perfect state.
Yeah.
So we can venture a bit further, but I do feel that in my utopia, pragmatism has to be one of the criteria if it is to be more realistic. Because again, there's only trade-offs, right? There's no great solution. It's only trade-offs in our lives, right? Always trade-offs. You know, the biggest star that you can envy the life of has had to make trade-offs in their personal life. But no one has the perfect life. And, you know, and you know, even the Tibetan monk living in peace has had to do trade-offs and will have to keep on doing trade-offs to live that. So I think even in the perfect world, trade-offs will happen. You will have to choose and mess up and learn. But the question is, are we learning as fast as we should for the greater number to have the best experience? I don't think we are. I mean, we you know, so many times like these political systems that go, you know, back and forth, you know, in France or in the US, like a bipartisanship or whatever, that we know are inefficient and are not changed for the sake of politics. It's a bit depressing. There's so many bigger issues we need to tackle as humanity, and seeing this kind of waste of gray matter is a bit like, you know, ultimately my utopia, that doesn't really happen. We, you know.
I mean, to be clear, I'm saying the word like utopia. I mean, utopia is like comes from Greek meaning no place. It's like a place which isn't like in existence. I see utopia as more as a horizon, a place to like go towards, and then you'll see what happens when you go along the way, because you never actually get to the horizon. But what you were saying just now about like there's always going to be scarcity, some kind of issue. It's like, for me, this brings out the need for growth, because we have psychological, emotional, spiritual growth in moments of hardship. I mean, this is kind of coming back to the beginning of the interview with the song, with the shackles, you know. I mean, not to promote the shackles, but basically, or concentration camps, but simply we grow. Many people grow in difficult situations. You know, I did this workshop because, I mean, doing workshops, seminars is my main thing. And I came up with this workshop whereby I asked participants about their ideal society without telling them what kind of society the political theory is. And there's like, one is effectively a fully automated luxury communism or gay space communism. Another one is like one with a lot of like automation and with replicators and like universal basic services, so people are given houses for free. Another one is like an anarcho, like primitivist one, and another one is like a Mad Max kind of no state, no, there's only like this private police killing racist kind of state, a bit like in Mad Max or in Elysium. And people generally, and then they choose this, and people tend to choose either the green one or the communist one, or a mixture between them. And then I say, you know, it's a bit of a communist. They say, oh, really? But they'll generally be okay with this. But the thing is, like, once after I gave the explanation of this, and I don't want to say this as an aha, I'm trying to catch them. I've got you now. But just simply, I think without using the terms, you're more likely to talk about the issues. What do you want, really? But once a participant chose the racist kind of big business control everything, there's no social state, there's kind of dangerous, and all in the group were having a go at him for this. And I went to him, I put my arm around him, I thought, yeah, what's the reason for this? And he went, because then you can grow in this kind of society, in a society where there's everything is good, you're not going to be growing into. And I mean, of course, one can think
that's very
there'll be reason need to grow in different things, but this is like why I like it. Like this is why I see the whole utopic project as the one which is, it needs diversity, so we can talk what actually do we want in life and how is the best way to achieve it. This is like I'm interviewing like a big variety of people all over like the political sphere and all kinds of like different backgrounds to try to work out, get and have like a diversity of like utopian views. So this is, then we're coming to the second question now, after that little speech from me, is that in terms of like your utopia, if you're thinking, okay, is this like a personal utopia, or is it like French or like a black or musician, however you want to understand, or simply an individual one. But how do you think other people can share this? I mean, what kind of people do you think will see the overlaps with your utopia?
Wow. I mean, everyone, right? Like I feel like, we all the intersection of different things, right? Like you know, by virtue of existence, I'm I'm different than any other black person, right?
Mm,
I'm different from any, you know, women or men or country, man. Like, and I feel like my utopia has to encompass the development of everyone, because we all an intersection. You know how we say like 6 degrees of separation, whatever. I do believe we all connected, and I don't see my utopia being, you know, it wouldn't be an utopia if it was only from an individualistic, uh, you know, perspective. And again, when we're talking about diversity of thought, I really feel like that's important, and therefore one group can never be it. You know what I mean? Like if there was only, let's say, if in the US corporations were only black people, or only black people and musicians, that would be a terrible world
mhm,
because you don't get that diversity of thought, you know. And I personally grow having these exchanges, like right, with you and with different, we're talking about my friends a bit before, like for Colombia, with different, things that brought me so much because I have a different perspective that was sometimes very opposed to mine, but that forced me to think.
mhm,
And to come back to your point of growth, you need friction, and usually different identities bring this friction naturally, and that's why you need them in the same place, because the Marxists will challenge the capitalist, and that's a great thing, and vice versa. That's where you get the most interesting and more developing ideas. It's
mhm,
not just one or the other. And I feel like, as you said, that friction needs to happen. I don't think it needs to be, yeah, I get the point of having like a world that kind of very similar to today, big, rich, big corporations kind of running the world too. But I don't think that's a prerequisite of friction. I think friction will always happen due
mhm,
to the fact of mixing different groups with different things. And I'd say also the last thing that I was listening to quite a lot, in songwriting, like Pat Pattinson, which is like a Boston College, songwriting teacher, was putting it in the way of, stability versus instability. These are the two realm of creation and artistic expression. Something is either stable or unstable. And then it brought me to think about, order and chaos. A lot of people talk about these being the friction that happens, the creative chaos against the orderly, organization of society, and the two fighting constantly. Um, and I think that's what needs to happen. Too much chaos, too much creativity, too much, if the world was run by artists, um, that would be terrible because it's chaos. It's like
mhm,
creative energy that constantly shifts. But then if it was run by very efficient people, it would lead to terrible things. And we've seen actually where it leads. When you're so efficient that even in the wrong things, you efficiently mass kill people,
mhm,
right? And so I feel like that kind of basically chaos and order need to coexist at all times to, and that friction
mhm,
creates that balance that makes us move forward. So,
mhm,
just to kind of, because I was just like kind of going left and right. What I meant is, I'm a musician, but I'm also someone who works in corporations and so on. And I think this is how I want my utopia to be. Different people doing different things at the same time, challenging themselves so that they come to a place of understanding, the broader understanding possible. And so it requires people from different backgrounds, non-artistic, artistic and so on.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And does that reply
does.
to your question? Not at all.
But I have a question like to go along with this, but for this one has or needs certain competences to deal with this friction. And I'm wondering what it is. I mean, what's the kind of, I would call it like a utopian skill, if one wants to call it that. So what do you bring to the table, man? What is it that other people could learn from, benefit from in order to create this kind of utopia?
Oh, wow. You know, I think it really goes through. So there's a couple of things. One is intellectual curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of the things that, and I think it's even why we gravitated to be friends. It's that fundamentally one of my criteria for really getting along, it's part of myself, is people who are intellectually curious, because that forces them to try to understand what they don't understand, the differences. So I think that's one of the things. And then to be curious, to be like intellectually curious, I think there's prerequisites. And it's very simple. It's you need to be safe enough psychologically to handle the unknown, to handle like, and so I think the main skill is to, I guess, is love and handling fear and all these primary developmental things that sometimes, because the world is an imperfect place, we're very deprived of. And for me, so it's very simple. It's like, I think curiosity is love, right? Curiosity is being willing to spend the time and energy and emotional energy and so on for the sake of something that you don't understand. Mm-hmm. It is loving something. When I'm curious in music, I go and I try to find more. And that's investing my emotional energy. So I think it's kind of like, there's not one skill, but I'd say all the skills necessary to intellectual curiosity, being at peace with yourself, loving yourself and loving others, basically, being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Loving oneself as well as loving others. So it's like an extension of the golden rule.
Yeah. I think like self-love brings upon love of others, like your alter ego / in French we say autrui, the other, right? Mm-hmm. And to love the other, you need to be able to love the other within you, right? And there's a kind of, I really believe that if you don't love yourself, it's very hard to love others, truthfully. And I think self-love, in a way, enables you to then understand a bit better and love, someone else. And that means, that translates into curiosity. That translates into doing to others what you love. As you said, a golden rule. I think that's really that, actually.
Well, that sounds like more than a Jungian love of one's shadow side, which means the areas in me that are less developed, like if I'm introverted, my extroverted side or whatever. But actually, if I've understood you correctly, it's also loving oneself despite one's failures, being able to, I'll put an extra word just to see if I've understood you right, like self-forgiveness as well for the failings when one doesn't do the things that one wants.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm sure most of us are guilty of self-hatred in different ways, and we all struggle. I still struggle with so many things that in terms of accepting my failures, right? And there's a constructive conversation with them, but I feel like when you don't accept your failures, they come back in a nasty way. Mm-hmm. Like shoving something under the rug, and then it will ultimately, come out. And so, I also love what you said, which is loving yourself is every part of it, even the darker side of it, or your least naturally preferred thing, like extroversion when you're an introverted, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. And this requires curiosity as well. I think curiosity really, really, for me, nails a bit like what I think we should all be able to develop. Like that, that intellectual curiosity is usually, I have a tremendous respect and admiration for people who were intellectually curious.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You go to a party and someone's asking you, "What do you do?" And oh wow, that's cool, and shows a range of being curious to what you do. Usually, you feel good about this because someone spends the time, and you feel like they usually know more because they've asked themselves the question, "What is outside of myself?" Right? And this is such a for me some really a trait that scores so high into what I aspire to be, remain, and what I love into people.
Mm-hmm. The thing that interests me is like the intersections, the way like the utopias of certain people cross over with others. Because what you're saying is, I mean, the competence, if you want to call it that, to love oneself, to love others, this is something, I don't believe that myself, that competences are an accident. I think it's like it's been shown, for example, that like mental health in Denmark is healthier than in the US and healthier than in like England and Cymru and other like countries, simply because of like the values that are being brought across in like the education system. And then same with the rest, like with Sweden or Finland, there's actually higher levels of, it's been shown, of like mental health. And so therefore, because of that, I'm thinking the ability to be curious, to be intellectually curious, to love oneself, to love others, this is something which could maybe be a crossover with how children are being brought up in schools. Do they see each other? I mean, you were saying like competition is like, there's always been like competition, but depends, I think, how much of an emphasis is put on competitions in schools. Like the school my son goes to, I send him to a private one. One of the main reasons, because they try to not have this competition going on. And of course it's happening. I mean, I'm a Liverpool fan. Yeah, I mean, I like it, the competition. This is why we win things, because of competition. I don't want to like demonize a certain value, but it's like crossovers here with like the kind of thing that you'd like to have in society, with those thinking people working like education. But one of the things that inspired me to start these utopian interviews is I went to this event organized by Sieta in France. So Sieta, like an association of intercultural, cross-cultural trainers, pedagogues, coaches. And there was a man called Milton Bennett, and he was saying that we, the intercultural people, we have the competence of helping people to deal with the unknown. And he was saying, but in order for people to have the values that we want in society, I'm paraphrasing him, with more tolerance or whatever, then it's good if people have like the lower, this is now my interpretation of what he said, the lower levels of the Maslow hierarchy. So the physiological, people have food, they have all the drink, access to the things they need to, in order to help them to have the higher kind of like societies, higher like values, like or actualization. And the reason I'm saying that is because and I'm seeing another like crossover here, because I'm someone who used to be doing the Wim Hof method. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like a method of breathing whereby one is taking in a lot of oxygen into the body, doing 30 deep breaths and then breathing out, and then the oxygen levels go down in the bloodstream, and then because of that the carbon dioxide comes up. And now I'm training to be a summer breath instructor, whereas doing similar things. And the point is that you go beyond the fear level. There's no breath in the body, but you're training yourself to not get afraid in this situation. And whole like cold water immersion, which is also I'm into, cold showers. Recently in Poland, going in with many people, going into rivers where there's ice either side of you in the water, like up to here, even like going underneath. And it's like a crossover there. So to go beyond the fear and to just go out the comfort zone, really, and through that.
Yeah, it's very popular here. Like everybody goes like winter bathing, which terrifies me a bit. But then you have the sauna and you go back into. No, I think it's a good analogy. Like it's like just a few things coming to mind, but it's so weird, right? Like when I'm thinking about the Maslow pyramid, the Maslow. I don't know. Sometimes you go into countries that are completely deprived of some of the right or inconsistently deprived, right? Somebody cannot have like kind of the psychological safety, uh, even if they have the physical material one, right? If let's say you have rich, psychopathic parents and they threaten you all the time, you're not afraid of being that you don't have necessarily that component. And there's a difference. Some people completely crumble. Some people strive into the adversity and become, much more understanding and altruistic of the people who are in the same circumstance. It's very hard to nail like what society would lead to the same thing. And you could say the same with a society where everybody has like that psychological safety. Does it lead to enlightened individuals? Not necessarily, but we always see it in kind of the you know children of a rich family that had everything to go well, and then they just not striving for change, right? So it's very hard. I feel like to nail what would be the base of what enlightens a certain number of people the most. That being said, in your example of Denmark, I think reality is a consensus, right? Like there's nothing that exists. Even science is a consensus. We all think that stars are like this and black holes are like that because of a consensus most of the time. There's observations, but we're never sure that these observations cannot be contradicted, in the future. So everything, even down to science, is a consensus among ourselves to say at a given moment, we are this culture, we are these people, we are, and I feel like technically you could strive in any system as long as the consensus, the rules of the game are respected, right? So the better version of capitalism is an amazing thing where you lose your job. Well, guess what? There's another one. You can train your skills and build something else, and you can discover yourself and self-actualize. And there's the right amount of friction in the right markets, and there's an optimum, and we all adjust everything and da-da-da, but that's not the case because the rules of the game are rigged in many ways. Same for, Marxism, right? If the government is not a selfish entity that preserves only itself, which it tends to be across the centuries, across the world, right? I've been watching a lot of Community. I don't know if you, Community, no. Parks and Recreation, Parks and Recs. I don't know if you know the show, but there's this character called Ron Swanson who's always like, the government basically should not exist, and I'm in the government to make sure it's as inefficient but doesn't waste taxpayers' money, right? It's kind of like the government sometimes in many places is self-serving and self-preserving. So a lot of the time, and that's why I think, for instance, Marxism for me probably doesn't work as well as other systems. It's because of that very fact that every time we see a government, whether it's capitalistic or not, the self-preservation rigs the game. And so the people who are in charge of making sure, it's kind of like who watches the watchman. Yeah. As soon as you're a watchman, who watches you? And that's a dilemma that over and over we've seen. When some people are supposed to enforce the greater consensus, they usually don't have the same consensus than the others about what it is. And so for me, it's just that. Utopia is when we all agree to the rules of the game and we play by those rules, no matter what it is, right? No matter how we want to go. And I think that's the tricky part. Creating a society where people agree to rules that ideally are beautiful, are inclusive and so on, but we agree to these rules and then we go 100% and we learn. And we change them and we change the rules of the game fairly together if we see that they're not working. I think that's the problem of most societies we're trying to build. It's like, is it possible to play by the same rules? That's a question I ask myself. It's like, is it? You know.
I think the whether people keep to rules or not has something to do with like dominating values in the country. And it was interesting because there was this report was done regarding the implementation of the UN Convention for the Rights of People with Disability. And like Spain was like rated really highly. And Germany, I mean, this was a time when Spain was having like financial crisis after the financial crisis 2008. Germany, the richest country in the European Union, was not rated very highly at all. And the analysis of it was simply there's a will in Spain. So even if they don't have the money, but they have the will to deal with things. And I was like we were talking about earlier, I mean, like Ethiopia, a country which has had, I don't know if it's still having a conflict with Eritrea, but still they said we're going to do something, but we're going to be planting trees. And how many trees was planted in a weekend again? It was like 1 million or something, was it?
I don't remember, a lot, like millions for sure.
But certainly, like not as rich as Germany, but still making this effort to deal, like in how they see it this way with like climate change. So, what do you think about like the green belt plan in Africa?
I think it's a beautiful thing. We were talking about like positive things. I feel like during this COVID times, I feel like it was very emblematic of negative, press cycles about everything, right? Mostly, and the U.S. elections and stuff like that. Like everybody was like, "Shoot, everything is going to hell a bit." And I feel like what we kind of all understand is that positivity goes a long way. Even in the most dire situation, an Italian guy playing guitar on the balconies is just like bringing, light. And I feel like that's what we need, and that's why we need, your formats and what you're doing. And what I think about the Green Project, fundamentally, it's like it's something that should be shouted much more than the iceberg melting, because it's a great example, basically, to contextualize. This is a great green wall being, implemented in, I guess sub-Saharan Africa, like just in a belt that goes from Senegal to is it Ethiopia, kind of there. And so beautiful examples of how reclaiming land from the desert has so many positive impact in terms of water retention in the wells, ability to cultivate, agriculture and so on, and food. And so we're gaining with this project in Senegal and Ethiopia, land that is in turn making these economies able to grow and people to eat fundamentally. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I would love to hear more of these concrete examples of what we can do. And it costs only 8 billion or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if we were just planting trees, that would be amazing. If we were doing it in a thoughtful and measured way.
Mm-hmm.
I think these kind of things are really, really important because, for instance, global warming has been a subject that's very tricky. That's quite negative when we talk about it. And that's really unsubstantiated in many ways. If you really ask some of the questions, you sometimes see that a lot of the things are said, but not measured. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, we should just have windmills everywhere. And it's like, oh, sure, but windmills, you need wind. How do you store the energy? Is that the most efficient? We constantly need to ask ourselves what's the truth and measure it. And we're not doing that most of the time. We just say things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just say them and we don't even look at the details. So, I feel like this is the Great Green Wall is just there's a measurable impact to it. I like that. I feel it gives hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should do that more than just conventions where countries try to, agree on 20,000 steps that is not really a plan and ultimately will not be measurable in a way that brings result, or not implementable inconsistency to the measures that we're putting in. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what I think about these, like hope. We need more hope, and that should be what we
This is
we
a good,
talk about.
yeah, it's a good, we should make, we'd be talking about. I think this is a good point to kind of end on, really. I think like, because negative news is so, our body gets addicted to it, the kind of release of the adrenaline, the cortisol, the body just seeks, and the way that the neurotransmitters, the neurons in the brain think, now we should be feeling fear by clicking on this. And I was at this event last week about YouTube accounts, and I had to, me and the group, we were analyzing this one, and it was basically tons and tons of videos saying, these people, they're stupid, and I can't believe this. I mean, they were angry about things one should get angry about, like transphobia and homophobia, all the kind of things one should get angry about. But basically, it was just meh, 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 meh for 40 minutes. This is bad, I can't believe they're so stupid, I can't believe they're so bad, for like 40 minutes for something an hour. So this is why I'm trying with this like channel here to have like something positive which is coming out there, and asking people what kind of hope do you have, what kind of hopeful societies. So just want to say again, I'll go back to sharing, just make sure I'm going to be sharing the right thing. So everybody, those of you who are still watching this after about an hour and a quarter, I hope maybe you're cooking food or something at the moment. This is what I do when I'm cooking. So click on this, go to Davy's YouTube site, all my 25 subscribers, go to his, and there'll be a big expansion of his number of subscribers that he has. But anyway, because he does good music, he's a really top guy, as you've just seen. I just want to share something else to my the others. Is that, no, not this, my Facebook account, is that I was talking with Evelyn recently, and there's this interview, see here. So the quote down here, for feminist utopia, we need to challenge the concepts of work. So look into that for those of you who are maybe new people on for this page here. Just to relate to that, I'll just share something else regarding the, oh, where is it? This is the fun. There it is. For those of you who've been aware, there's been like big protests in the UK recently because of this woman was like raped and the murder's been big protest about this, and then subjected to police repressions. Well, this book has been made available for free, called Feminist City, Claiming Space in a Man-Made World. If you got a Kindle or something like that, or you can read books online, just want to do an advert for this book because it costs free. And it's available here. You can see, just go to Verso, Feminist City. That's the place to look it up. And there's like different perspectives you got going on there. So, Dave, it's been inspirational, transformational, hope-giving, and spiritual and musical. It's been really, really cool interview, man. I'm very glad you came here.
Thank you so much, for having me. It's again, I think your format and what you're doing is so important, and I had a blast. I feel like these exchanges is what brings a lot of joy, but also makes me reflect. I took a few notes as well, and I'll be looking forward not only to watch your talk with Evelyn, but whatever comes next. And yeah, for sure, like I'll definitely also recommend your channel and your format to as many people as I can. So keep doing that. It's so important to have these conversations, and really my pleasure to be here. Really.
I'm glad. Now I'm going to stop saying this on my videos because I've got hold of this thing where you just see this thing say to click subscribe, but I can't work out how to add it to videos yet. And my kids are sick at home, so I haven't really had the time to work out. So I'm going to have to say this verbally. If you've not subscribed yet, then click on the subscribe button and also on the notification bell, and then you can get these updates about future utopian interviews that I hope will be even just a bit as inspiring as this one was here. So we're coming to the end now. So thank you again, Davy. Thank you for all the people watching this. Bye.
Bye.
All right, press